It's time again for the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with Dr. John Dentico. The mission of our podcast is to provide 21st century leadership training for a talent-driven world. We help organizations implement strategies and practices designed to attract, hire, engage, and retain top talent while mitigating the effects of burnout. Our guests are experts in various fields of organizational dynamics, including, but not limited to, leadership, management, communication, and coaching. They bring a world of knowledge and solutions to our viewers and listeners. I am sincerely grateful for their participation and ideas. So let's dive in. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We genuinely appreciate your support. Hello once more, and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I'm Dr. John Dentico, your host. I want to welcome today's guest, Jackson Calame. Jackson teaches visionary entrepreneurs how to unlock sustainable revenue growth and expand their legacy by becoming a power brand in their market. Said a bit differently, Jackson teaches businesses not only to avoid failure, but how to win by becoming a true leader in their market. I am pleased to have him here as a guest with me today. Hello, Jackson. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, John. It's my honor to be here.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. It's great. Let's get down to business, as I like to say. And so I'd like to begin with that and ask you this question. You speak about a chief level conversation. Can you clarify for the listeners and the viewers what you mean by that?
Absolutely. I just finished a great book, The 5 Temptations of the CEO by Patrick Lencioni. And in it, he talks about the desire for harmony over conflict. The C-level executives that are coming into the smaller business world right now, these fractional C-level executives, they don't seem to know what C means. Chiefs, they lead the way. They invite dialogue and conversation. They don't become yes men who just gravitate towards listening to what the entrepreneur wants. We've got to be able to bring chiefs in, and we've got to make room for those people where healthy conflict can occur, where you can actually discuss things from different angles, not just listen and obey the leader who doesn't know anything about marketing or doesn't know anything about operations or doesn't know anything about finances. There's got to be more room for argument, and that can be healthy. It needs to be.
I think constructive conflict is where it's at.
So I come up with it. Let's say I come up with an idea as a chief, right? A marketing concept and campaign. Here comes entrepreneur and says, I don't really like that campaign. We're going to switch gears and we're going to do this instead. That chief needs to be able to step up and hit back and say, wait a second, I'm the chief marketing officer, right? Isn't this my call? Aren't you supposed to be evaluating what I do, not telling me what to do? And what happens is most entrepreneurs fire that chief. Why? They want a yes man. They want somebody who will do what they say. My uncle is richer than you and he says that you should be doing this. Does your uncle work for you? Does he pay attention to your strategy for hours at a time? Does he know your weaknesses? No, he's just an outside observer. So again, back to that chief concept, we have to make room to want chiefs on our team. And we have to find people who are willing to be a chief and step up, or we're just going to keep spinning in circles.
I was just reading something the other day that talked about the modern workplace. We have the 5 generations now working in the modern workplace. And one of the research findings was people are less apt to want to stand up to be a chief or to be a leader in the organization, which I find so incredible to me.
I was watching Remember the Titans with my kids the other day. Wanted to show them that movie and help them understand the social injustices, etc. And seeing Denzel Washington as a coach, get in these kids' faces and scream at them, reminded me of just how fast he would be fired over and over in schools right now. He would probably be thrown in jail for leading with that type of tenacity. And it's a shame. But at the same time, as leaders, we've got to find a way. How do we retain the tenacity, adjust our tones and cadence a bit to fit for this modern world, and inspire younger generations to maybe not toughen up? Maybe we're past that phase, but inspire them to, again, understand healthy conflict. There's a huge communication shift that has taken place. We don't have conflict like we used to, or a space to create it. We've all got to learn so much more about communication in order to make that happen in a modern society where, yelling, or tone raising or fourth quarter, 2 minutes left in the game, down by 10 behaviors that used to be accepted and are only accepted in sports now. How do you bring that into the workplace? That's a hard thing to teach.
One of the basic values that I talk about in the leadership model I developed over 30 years ago was safety. People have to feel safe,
right,
to say what's on their mind, say their piece. As my mother used to say, have your say. Just have your say. That, hey, listen, as you pointed out, this is what I think the marketing plan should be. And if someone challenges it, fine. Okay, let's just talk about it. Let's go down the road and figure out why I think this is right and why you think this is wrong. And let's see if we can figure out how we can get there together. And I think, I don't know if we do enough of that sort of mentoring.
So right.
Mentoring or leading in that way. And people want to feel safe, or else they're just backed up against the wall and they're not doing anything for the organization. They're doing the minimum. They're quiet quitting. It matters.
John, you got me writing that down, man. Safety, I'm going to be meditating that because it's one of those aspects. It reminds me, again, back to that fourth quarter dynamic or front lines going to war. There's many examples. I worked in an oil rig when I was young. I was all yell and fight all the time. And at the same time, think of nurturing moms in the home. A nurture mom where that's not part of the environment. She's got kids to control too, who are insubordinate. She got things to, so I've noticed that, especially with more women entering the workforce, that's not wrong that one is right and one is wrong on how that's done. But because of that nurturing shift in fight and flight personalities, again, fight and flight's not they're both wrong. In fact, finding that middle ground of how to make room for both requires, like you said, creating that safety net of vulnerability. I think it starts with us being vulnerable. Again, back to Patrick Lencioni, 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yeah, I think one of the models that I think is very useful is this idea of a learning leader. The leader is teaching as well as, this is the reason we do this. I'm not saying that we have to stick to it all the time. You never know where a good idea is going to come from. So you have to make room. You have to make room, but you also have to explain why things are the way they are. And I think when you do that, people grasp onto it and say, oh, now I see, rather than say, no, we don't do that. Don't ever talk about that again. You know, that kind of a attitude versus here's the reason why we do something like that. Let me get down to the next question if I could. So, because I'm just real curious to ask you, I think many people understand what this is, but I want to hear your perspective on it. Can you give me the characteristics, if you will, between a dysfunctional and championship team?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I've got a poster we created on it based on Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. So on the functional side, you got a team that has a basis of trust. I highly recommend the book. It is not possible to summarize the mastery of the entire book. But on one side, you got trust. And in an environment of trust, you have open dialogue and conversation. That's what leads to being able to have a healthy conflict. On the other side, people are avoiding each other. They're avoiding meetings. Those are symptoms of people who don't trust each other. They're not willing to engage in the conflict. But if you don't have that healthy trust, in fact, let's have some fun with it. That lead on the championship side, it leads to commitment. And this is one of those posters, by the way, for the 5 dysfunctions of a team. But it leads to that commitment. And then so what we do as a team, when we're talking about a situation where we're praising each other for following it, then we talk about the symptoms we recognize on the high performance side. And if somebody's falling short or falling victim of one of these symptoms, like lack of commitment, if we are revisiting a discussion again and again as a company, you might have a company that going through that situation, and we can say, okay, we're revisiting this discussion again and again, which means we have a lack of a commitment, which means we also have a fear of conflict, and also means we lack trust. So let's get to the bottom of that. What am I doing as a leader to have lost y'all's trust? Or what's happening in the organization that might be affecting our trust? It might take an hour to go through. It might take 5 minutes. It usually only takes 5 to 10 minutes and feels like an hour. But when we make that time, we get everybody back on the ground of what's called speed of certainty. Then everybody can run the race forward without worrying about tripping over the chairs and the rocks and everything else in the way. If the lights are off, people won't run. If the lights are on and everybody's bought in and we're all inspired and we're ready, we hit it hard. That 5 to 10 minutes becomes well worth all the time lost, or that hour lost, so to speak, because everybody's now running faster together.
I agree. I've taken trust to a different level, and it's an influence that I got actually from a military genius by the name of John Boyd. Robert Coram wrote a phenomenal book called Boyd, the Fighter Pilot That Changed the Art of War. And in that book, they talk about, and this has become part of my leadership model, not just trust, but mutual trust. And trust, the value trust, is transcendent. It cuts across every other value. And what we mean by mutual trust is simply this. You and I know that it's important for the people to trust the leader. We're right in the middle of the political season right now. And the question really is, who do you trust? That's the question. And so it's important for the people to trust the leader. But it's also important for the leader to trust the people.
Absolutely.
But there's another piece to this, and a lot of people don't see it. And that is, if you have a group of, here's an example. If you have a group of about 10, 12 people, it's important for them to trust one another. Because if you don't, the analogy I use is the car battery, right? A car battery is only as strong as the weakest cell. So if you have six cells in a battery, and you have one cell that's bad, that's all you're going to get out of the battery. It's the same thing in an organizational structure, an organizational dynamic. If you have one person who is not trustworthy or trustful in the dynamic, you're going to have problems because they become a hindrance to the flow of information and knowledge. And you have to figure that out. What's going on? You don't seem to be real happy, and it could not be work related. It could be something at home. It could be a domestic issue. It could be a sadness that they're enduring, or someone's sick in the family. It could be a number of things, but you have to farm through that. And if you don't do it, if you don't get to the mutual trust side of it, then you're really having a difficulty keeping that organization moving forward, keeping that group moving forward. So to me, I absolutely believe that. And everything I read right now tells me that we have a trust deficit in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely. We have a trust deficit. We have a global economy as well. And especially with virtual assistants, people hire VAs. I call it virtual abuse. John, I do. What I see, the way they're treating their VAs like a transaction, it's to my advantage because our virtual assistants absolutely love working with us because we take interest in who they are. Okay, so there's this trust factor, right? Well, I heard a prominent CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I was talking to him about his workforce in Mexico, and he made the assumption that people in South America could not relate well enough to the American culture in order to be hireable compared to those in Mexico. And I'm thinking, and my heart's hurting, my head's going, and train them. I was like, just train them. Oh, I didn't say it. He was too self-assured to tell him that. I then hired in the Philippines, Pakistan, India, and also have team members in Colombia, Peru, and Mexico. And I talked to another guy who said, that doesn't work. And he said, the people in the Philippines don't want to work with the people in India, and the people in India don't want to work with the people in South America. And again, my heart hurt because I can just hear the prejudice coming out. And I'm like, golly, do you not hear yourself? I know, and the ultimate racism that's being expressed with that attitude. So fast forward the other day, my executive in the Philippines, she has an emergency move, has to move halfway across the Philippines. And she's sending me little videos of her new place and how she's running the electric wire, 300 meters of electric wire from wherever she's connecting it to her house with her husband and one technician helping out. And I shared that with 3 team members from Colombia. We pulled it up, the video, and we watched it together. And I didn't know what the reaction would be. I didn't know if they'd say, you're used to it. We all go through this. Or what? They were crying. They were crying and said, man, you just never know what other people have to go through. And I'm sitting there humbly, first world America. I've never had to run electric wire in my life. I don't know anybody who has. And seeing the connection, what I was doing as a leader was facilitating a connection for somebody who's out of work for a week. It would be easy for the team to judge and complain if there wasn't any type of evidence. I didn't ask for the evidence. I didn't demand the evidence. She's wise enough. She's loving enough, persistent, patient, consistent, and reliable enough. Those are the values we look for when we're hiring, that she did that on her own accord. And then by bridging the gap of vulnerability with our team members, now my Latino team executives have an extreme appreciation for their counterpart in the Philippines, even though they don't even speak the same language. They understand that situation. So that opportunity for us as leaders to bring people together, to bridge gaps in different ways, it has nothing to do with culture. It has everything to do with our ability and willingness to bridge the gap amongst our team members.
And provide the training that's necessary.
Absolutely.
We think that we hire people and they know exactly what to do. And the mentoring, I don't know how much mentoring is really going on. I know that C-suite executives are getting coaching from different coaches, like some of that I've talked to. But the question is, how much real training, and are you taking the time to do that and trying to do it in a way that brings people along in a very logical way, in a step-by-step logical way. In fact, this kind of leads me to the next question I'd like to ask, if that's okay. And that is, what do you think are the most important or prevalent challenges facing remote or hybrid work teams today?
You just nailed it, John. Dr. Seth Yates started working with me a couple of years ago. Within a month and a half, he was gracious enough, leader enough to ask me to be a business partner in Able Health. And so we accepted. We gave 5% equity as well to one of the Selves rep who introduced us. Nutritionist by trade, wants to see us win long-term. Of course we want him involved in that and helping us grow. He one day says, Jackson, how do you find such incredible VAs? And I laughed. I said, I find incredible people, Dr. Yates said. I find incredible people. I do not find incredible virtual assistants. I train them. I spend 3 to 5 hours per day with my virtual assistants, training them up, helping them learn. They come in as incredible people with incredible virtues, and they have the ability to learn. But Leo started with taking phone calls for what he was doing, phone calls with AT&T or Verizon before he came on board with us. He came in, he was our lead technician on our Go High Level setup, on building out websites, on interacting with customers for client fulfillment as a client fulfillment advisor. It took training him one step at a time. The procedures, resources, and templates were necessary. So was the nuance of cultural education. Moving on to Ange again, over in the Philippines, when she started, her English was super, super limited. She probably learned 300 words per day in English while she worked with me. What is a CRM? What's a client? What's a retention? What's a management? All those little bitty aspects. So being able to take that time on the front end, she knew how to beg. She didn't know how to sell. She knew how to push and tell people all about how exciting first-class business is. And you really should do this. We're going in and sell me this pen. We're talking about the pen and she's like, Jackson, do you need a pen? I was like, good. I don't need one, do I? And I was like, that's what we need to do with our services. We spent 2 hours role-playing on that reality. Why? Now she can train everybody else up on the same concept. I don't have to do it. So training, taking time for people, caring about their needs, wanting to know what their desires are. One day she's got a back hurting. I'm like, what's going on with your back? It's been a couple of days. Turns out she doesn't have a chair. Send her a bonus. Go get a chair. We should have a chair for sure. She's training another VA. Find out the VA is using her laptop while she's sleeping in her home. And then leaving in the morning when she wakes up, they're energetic. They're everything they can to sacrifice to win. They don't often tell us that. Why? Because the average American business owner would let them go, would fire them, would not be comfortable with that situation. Make room for people's problems. Be willing to be there for them. Hear them out, listen, and train them. Or hire somebody to do it if you're not going to.
Yeah. We had a phrase I learned many years ago called grow your own. And what that means is if you're looking for the perfect person to come into your organization, you may not find that person.
You're on.
So you have to grow your own. And my attitude was, give me the person with the right attitude.
Yes.
And I can train him to do anything. And it worked. And weeding through that can be a difficult issue at times. But if you get the person with the right attitude, who's ready to learn, And you've got fertile ground, if you will, to plant the seeds and to see stuff grow and to see them grow. And so I agree with you. I want to move on to the next question if I can. And that has to do with, I know you want to inspire leaders at all levels to be their best self. Can you give me some more detail as to what you mean by their best self?
I had to learn that the hard way. It cost me my first marriage in some respects. I had this mentality I had to be better than others. I had this mentality that if I wasn't the best in the world, that there wasn't really room for me. And it led to very unhealthy communications and tribal leadership. They call it the I am great mentality, which the underlying message that's not shared when people use I am great language is, and you are not. And that was we all have different communication styles. They limit it down to 5 stages, but you can move to different stages. What you can't be is you can't take an entire tribe of people from one stage to the next, but you can take a person across multiple stages. I finally had this realization running around a track, almost giving up because nobody was there to watch. And because it didn't really matter if I finished this, I had this thought, what would LeBron James do in this moment? He would beat his own time. He would book it. And so I crushed the last lap and a half, went through it an extra 30 yards, and I'm sitting there going, that's what it feels like to be LeBron James. Right there, doing it with integrity while nobody's watching, right? Going out, beating myself, being willing to do what my best self could do in a moment without accolades, without recognition, without affirmation, all that stuff. No, just because that's what I owe to myself. That's my opportunity. So when we step into that, we say, and at the end of the day, I sleep very peacefully now that I've shifted that mentality. No, I'm not better than anybody. I don't need to be either. I just want to be my best self today. And if I'm not, then I'm also my best self at forgiveness, which means I'm going to forgive myself instantly. Let all of that go. I'm not going to pity party or beat myself up. I'm going to move right back in the very next moment into being my best self. And I go to bed at peace. I wake up the next day ready to do the same thing. And I have no lost time. Just, I don't know, again, wallowing in whatever it is. I don't have time for that. I want to be my best self.
I agree. I think we spend a lot of time, an opinion. We are our most inspoken critics. No one is harder on us than us. And the statistics bear that out, whether you look at statistics, for example, of suicides of young men and of young women. You have to be pretty hard on yourself to take your own life. And I don't speak about that easily because it touched my life. And you really, if you don't find a way to forgive yourself and to say, hey, you know what? I'm just a mere mortal. I'm just a guy trying to do my best. And I didn't make it today. Well, tomorrow's a new day. Try again. And get up and storm through it as best you can. But I think one of the greatest days of my life was the day I accepted my own humanity and recognized I'm not perfect. I am trying to do my best. I'm trying to make a difference. I'm trying to help people be happier in their lives, in their work lives. And hopefully it flows over to their personal life. But you can only do so much. And if you can forgive yourself and really understand that, again, tomorrow's another day and we'll try to do better. And maybe I need to take a minute, take a step back and say, am I going at this the right way or am I not? I think you're right on. I think the only measure is your own measure. And I think if most people understand that, I think life would be easier for them. I wanted to ask you this authentic leader kicked around a lot. And it's like one of those head scratchers for me. And I'm trying to understand what we suspect is going on. Is it the fact that leaders are being inauthentic? So we have to remind them it's important for them to be authentic. A case in point, I had a woman friend who would tell me routinely that when she went to work, she had to put her game face on. And I used to think, wow, this must be real tough in some respects for her, because she leaned more towards an introverted personality, if you will. So to get charged up, to generate the energy, to put the game face on, probably took more out of her than it would me or many other people. So let's talk about this for a few minutes. Being authentic. What does that mean to you? And I always thought, back to this example, that all she had to do was just be herself. She was great. That's all she had to do. And so I'd like to hear your ideas, your thoughts on this notion of authentic self.
It's a fantastic question. I think we have to go back to the basics. Teaching people directly how to adjust their behaviors usually doesn't go very well. John, if you were just nicer to people, like, this usually doesn't turn out too well. There's a Miyagi nature of helping people, intriguing, attracting, inspiring people to allow you to motivate them and to adjust their paradigms. That's my formula, at least. And I don't do invitations before those aspects happen: intrigue, attract, and inspire. Not anymore. We can teach, though, and people do need to learn. And we can learn as human beings how to adjust. Think about a baby, and a baby who has tried a popsicle before or a fruit. And they have these little contraptions. You can put that fruit inside a little bag, and the baby will munch on it without choking because they can't get through the bag. It's like a little pacifier thing. And you would think that the baby would just reach in and grab the fruit, pull it out, and eat it. Like they would just train the baby how to open it and how to get the thing out. Like they won't do that anymore. You can't do that. The human being it's just going to munch and munch on that coating, and it's going to take them time. Lots of different variables are going on in that baby's brain that are convincing it to just munch on the bag, right? It takes some time to figure out how to inspire the child, and take some learning other habits as well. I don't think we're too different as adults. So inauthentic, I think, yes, we very much can. I'm guilty of being inauthentic in my life in several ways. When I begin to recognize my own humanity, and that, like you said, I can become more balanced and human and centered on, okay, how do I gravitate back towards being willing to be vulnerable enough to be authentic? J.P. Sears teaches this all the time, the comedian. First time in my life growing my hair out. Why? I hated my curly hair. I was scared of it. When my son wanted to grow his hair out, I said no because of cliche ethics reasons of religion and all that. No, this is what society wants you to look like, etc. When I saw his best friend who looked like a little version of Jesus and a good kid who had long hair, and I was like, son, you know what? I'll grow my hair out with you too. I cannot tell you how scary that was a year ago, committing myself to grow my hair out. Knowing it, in the business community, I would get judged by other people. People would say things, I don't really like curly hair, but you know what? Let's just do it. And I have moved into an appreciation for my own hair at 36 years old. Now, as silly as that is, that applies to so many things that we can learn. Do I need to be more diplomatic as a leader? How do I step into that and do that? Can I be more vulnerable with my employees and team members and talk about silly things like hair or the fact that I'm twice divorced and learn hard lessons in both? Can I allow people to be authentic with me without saying, oh my gosh, that person has a cancer condition? We better find a way to bring somebody new in. And come on now, we're talking about eliminating somebody's job because they're going through a health condition. How do we do so and be politically correct? You can't, by the way. It doesn't exist. So how do we take the time to accept that other people have vulnerabilities in their life, allow their strengths to shine, and make moves as leaders? Like, that has a lot to do, in my opinion, with authenticity and stepping into a willingness to be real with others, with yourself, all around. But I don't think that's something that we can directly learn super well unless we have the humility to want to learn that. And humility is a very misunderstood. In fact, the dictionary definition in English is wrong based on the original definition. Humility's dictionary, if you look it up, it says to esteem oneself to have low esteem for oneself. That is a disastrous definition for a virtue. That is a vice in and of itself. The original definition from Judaism, and what I looked up for Aramaic and Hebrew as well, was to appreciate oneself. We have people walk around being humble, saying, "Oh no, I'm not really that great. I might not know this." Blah blah blah. The self-deprecating and the low esteem components, those do not honor the virtue of humility, which is again a full appreciation of oneself, knowing that I'm not better than anybody else, but I am great how I am. I wish everybody in the world could feel that about themselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's humility is important. You don't have to go around patting yourself on the back every 15 minutes.
Why not?
But I think that you have to be able to express and appreciate yourself in a way that allows people to understand that it is an appreciation and not boasting over the top, because I think that sets people back.
Boasting over the top and patting on the back for a job well done over 15 minutes to me are two different realities. And you have to be in a culture, you mentioned this super well. If I'm in an environment and a culture with people who don't appreciate themselves, who are a gang, for instance, then I'm at risk if I make too big of a jump. Hey, look how great I am. Next thing you know, you're getting shot around the corner because all of a sudden you're acting better than the gang. So you have to be aware of your environment and who you're around. But if you're in a healthy environment of people who all appreciate themselves fully and appreciate others, then yeah, let's keep the positive energy. Recognize our opportunities for growth, but keep going. It does take serious, concerted effort to create a team like that. We won't bring people into our team that don't have those virtues I mentioned, the love, the consistency, the patience, the persistence, the reliability. We test for those on the front end. And I can tell you right now, just to give one little small tip outside of that ring, the easiest way for me to recognize a brand that is scaling and growing and one that is not is if they have a join our team button or a careers button. Every single brand that does not have a careers button or a join our team button has no vision for growth. And it's really easy to recognize there's red flags all over that entity.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And point well taken. I think that when part of the job of a leader is to make sure that people do understand the job they did, how well they did, and what they were up against.
Huge.
And if you've got big odds, you're against a rather substantial challenge, and people did well, I think you have to let them know that. I think it's really important. Let me ask you my last question, and then we can close out here. And that is, if you had a magic wand and you wanted to wave it at an issue or a problem, what would that problem be, and why did you choose that?
Yep. That would go back to that topic of helping people step into their best self. Our need to tear each other down, our need to position ourselves as less than others, it's toxic. It's not helpful. If we could appreciate the best of everybody, people aren't inherently evil, in my opinion. We have challenges, we have struggles, we have survival instincts. But if everybody in the world would shift like that to being their best self and just know they're good as they are and that change and progress is good too, all fighting would stop. Harmony would prevail. Conflict wouldn't be at odds with harmony. Harmony is not two people playing the same note. It's the opposite of that. It's two people playing different notes and coexisting in a way where it's beautiful and it's appreciated. So being our best selves, I wish that everybody could just step into that, fully embrace it, and not feel the need to self-deprecate or to tear somebody else down or to hide from truth. StrengthsFinder 2.0. I'm so grateful for that book. That led me to that. Basically said to me, Jackson, stop focusing on all of your problems and trying to fix those because you're already not good at those. And focus on your 5 strengths, what you're best at. And you will have far more progress if you focus on those 5 strengths. That changed my trajectory as a leader.
Point very well said and points well taken. Listen, Jackson, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate it. I think this is probably the most personal podcast I've done, and it's been good. It's a search for finding stuff that matters to people, that helps them become masters of their own fate as well. I believe in that. I think people have the power to do it. I think it takes action. Sometime maybe in the future, we can have an exchange about the difference between behaviors and taking action. And that the change of behavior, which many times is wrapped around this idea of a subconscious way to be, you have to take action to overcome that. You have to do something deliberately, subjectively and deliberately to overcome that. Yeah. So
You have a depth of wisdom, John, too. I'd love to have you on my show as well.
great.
And your show name, the Throttle Up Podcast, Leadership Podcast, I love what you did there. You could have easily said the Pedal to the Metal podcast, Leadership Podcast, which I think some people make it, but the Throttle Up, the science behind that, the intentionality behind that, oh, this is genius. And I loved hearing a couple of your shows before, and I was like, man, this guy.
I appreciate that very much.
Really.
And to be honest, the Throttle Up really is an outgrowth of the simulation work I do. And the idea being that a simulation is a way to throttle people up in their abilities to actually take action and do things. And the simulations I do have nothing to do with computers. It's 40 people in a room playing different entities around a very difficult issue, a complex issue that they face, that they're up against.
Wow.
And teaching them how to maneuver through that so that when they walk out the door, they have some really actionable things they can do the next day at work. I used to do this, now I'm doing it this way. And I learned how to do that in the simulation. So that's where the Throttle Up came from. But I appreciate the comments. It's great. Mr. Jackson, thank you so very much and appreciate it. And I'll look forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you.
Likewise, John. Take care.
Take care.